Like you lifers out there, when Konami announced that they've got a brand new Contra game called Operation Galuga headed our way, and it's coming very soon, I was very, very excited. This is a reimagining of the original story from the NES days and the arcade days, with a lot of cherry-picked elements from the Contra series across time, which is a very smart way to approach this type of gameplay, and best of all, it's being made by WayForward, so I was very excited for this, and I asked Konami for a Nintendo Switch review code, and they sent one to me, and thank you very much for that, Konami. I did jump in, and I was having a good time with this game, but something about the game just didn't really feel right. It didn't feel as buttery smooth as I was anticipating, as I was expecting and hoping, especially from a developer with as vaunted a history as WayForward has. And I think what's really gone on with the Switch version of the game and why there was a little bit of a disconnect, I don't know so much if it's input lag that I'm feeling when I'm playing the game or it's the 30 frames per second, but it doesn't feel buttery smooth. And one of my most recent Switch experiences was playing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which I was also able to play on the PlayStation 5, but I actually preferred playing it on the Nintendo Switch because there was no loss in frame rate. It just felt fluid and super fun. And that is an incredibly robust, side-scrolling 2.5D game, and I was kind of expecting the same type of experience out of Contra Operation Galuga. And I've thought about this a little bit, and I think one of the things that's really obvious here is that WayForward is an excellent 2D developer. They work with sprites a lot, and the decision was made for this game to update everything with polygon graphics, but also keeping it really true to the design ethos that Contra games have had through the ages. Whether you jumped in on the Game Boy or you played on Super Nintendo, Contra 3 Alien Wars on the SNES is absolutely incredible, by the way. And this game does mirror and echo and pull from liberally from little pieces of content and characters. You get the Probotectors in there. You get characters that you've seen across, of course, all the NES stuff and the Super Nintendo stuff, so it's really cool that it borrows from there. But WayForward, I think, could have served this platform specifically if it had chosen to go with pixel art and run it at 60 frames per second. Now, that wouldn't have been easy either, because what we all know about Contra, and especially what we expect out of Contra in a 2024 reimagining, is just an amazing amount of visual stimulation and bullets all over the freaking place. This is a series that really kind of put the run-and-gun genre on the map. There had been other run-and-gun games before that, and lots of different approaches with this, but I think run-and-gun kind of reached a new plateau. Contra is almost analogous to what Castlevania did for that sort of exploration and action-adventure type of gameplay and that retraversal mechanic. So Castlevania and Metroid kind of carved out that niche, and Contra almost has that same kind of respect as a run-and-gun experience. And one thing that really kind of drove it home for me playing this game as well is that this is, when you think back to the 80s original games, it's like the developers were already developing space shooters with lots of bullet hell to kind of navigate through, and then they put legs on the spaceships and let you run all over the place and jump on all kinds of stuff, and that's kind of how it feels. This feels like a bullet hell game. You can play this Contra Operation Galuga with the idea that you can get hit once and die, just like classic Contra games. And I absolutely recommend, if this game looks interesting to you, to pick up the Contra Anniversary Collection that Konami released across all the platforms. That is exceptional, and playing this definitely made me want to go back. But yes, I really kind of clued into the fact that this was like a bullet hell space shooter, but you're running around and you're picking up all kinds of cool weapons. You've got spread shots and machine guns, and you can stack those as well. So you can get like a level 2 homing missile if you want. They've also got an overload mechanic where you can basically lose the weapon, but it blasts out some kind of protective force field around you, or lots of missiles take out all kinds of enemies on screen. And there are power-ups that are floating across the screen all the time, and you're picking them up. I was picking up the machine gun power-up way more often than I wanted to, and out of the range of power-ups, I love the flamethrower, but that homing missile was fantastic. The laser escalates really well, and then there's this gun that kind of shoots black holes onto the screen, which is really, really freaking cool. But anyways, I was playing this on the Nintendo Switch, and I was expecting a 60 frames per second buttery smooth experience. That's not what I got, and I was kind of deflated by it. I don't know what's going to happen with this version of the game. I don't know if WayForward can patch it, But what I kind of recognized is that WayForward isn't at that sort of 3D kind of level that the Ubisoft Montpellier team is, and Ubisoft's got all of these studios and all of this expertise all over the world. And, you know, I beat the Lost Crown game and saw the list of credits of all the people that worked on that massive game, and it's a lot. There were a lot of developers on that game from studios everywhere, and WayForward probably didn't have the budget, probably didn't have the resources, and this game is multi-platform. So what I really clued into is that the Switch is not the version to pick up Contra Operation Galuga on if you have other platforms. If you've got a nice PC or you have a PlayStation or an Xbox, it's all over the place, and likely WayForward was kind of stretched to get it on all of these different machines, running as optimally as they can on all of these different systems, and the Switch took the knock. That 30 frames really... And it's not always 30 frames. There's definitely some chugging that's going on. And there's so much cool content in this. Lots of interesting bosses and, you know, mechanized enemies that you got to take over. And there's mutated monster-type creatures in this as well. Lots of cool environments to jump into. There, of course, it's 2.5D, so it's not always just scrolling, run and gun. There's pivots around the corners around things, and sometimes you'll be chased by enemies. It's really clever with its design elements, and it's awesome that it kind of pulls from all of these elements across Contra lore, but it also delivers 4-player play if you want to play in the arcade mode, and you can play as a bunch of different characters. There's a challenge mode in here, as well as this story mode, which isn't great in terms of its execution. You know, there's a lot of just like still images and things to read, and I found even like the how to play the game section was a little minimalist. You're basically just reading menu pieces, and I think there are just a lot more games out there that showcase how you can onboard somebody to jump in and be excited all the way along. And so there's a little bit of a start-stop in the way that the story is served up, and definitely a little bit of a start-stop in the way that the frame rate is handled on the Nintendo Switch version, and just that one-to-one connection. And I wanted to test that for myself. I don't have final code for PS5 or PC, but I downloaded the demo for both platforms. Felt fine on the PC. Honestly, the controller was a factor in this as well. I much prefer the D-pad and the ergonomics of the DualSense over the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which is what I was using. And, I just felt like I was struggling to make the jumps and the moves and the, blasted things and connect on to platforms and stuff. Playing it on the Switch, it felt a lot more silky smooth on PS5, and then I was shocked to see how well it ran, even though it's not a verified game, on the Steam Deck. It runs beautifully, 60 frames per second. It looks better. It's amazing. It's just like an accelerant. Everything is just pops into frame a little bit better. It pops off the screen a little bit better. And I could do that one-to-one across the Switch and the Steam Deck. So I do think it's a cool game. I think that there's a lot of content in there. I think there's going to be a lot of smiles on faces for the Contra diehards, like classic music and, interesting characters that pop up. You're going to see characters that you've seen before. And there's a new one named Ariana, who's got a sliding mechanic, and every character kind of plays a little differently. I like playing as more of the robotic characters, the Probotectors, and then there's Stanley Ironside, which is definitely evocative of Iron Man. They're all super cool. And then what you can also do in this game, which I appreciate, is the ability to add all of these perks. There's a perk tree, and you earn the in-game currency, so there's no external store that you have to jump into or whatever. You just unlock stuff by playing it, and the perks will give you extra life or an extra one-up, or make one of the weapons appear immediately as you jump into the game, or just boost you in a bunch of different interesting ways. You can take those off, and you can play it how you want to play it. And it's definitely one of those run-and-gun shooter action games where you're going to want to play it over and over again and accelerate into higher difficulties and change things like getting shot once and you're dead kind of thing. But it is cool. It's a good game. It's a solid game. I just wouldn't pick it up for the Switch if you have the choice. On the Nintendo Switch, I'd probably give it a 6.5 or a 7. I'll say 7. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. But if you pick it up for the other platforms, I think it's going to lean more towards an 8. Hopefully, fingers crossed, WayForward's got a patch for the Switch version.